Welcome to Fight News Now Extra. I'm John Pollock. We are chatting all the latest news and developments in the sport with John Ramdeen and Robin Black set to join us as we discuss the UFC's return to Canada. Drug testing is conducted ahead of UFC 184, and a big fight at middleweight looks to be set for Fox this April. MMA Fighting was the first to report that Luke Rockhold and Machida will headline the UFC on Fox card on April the 18th in Newark, New Jersey in a 5-round middleweight bout. Rockhold won his last 3 fights as he is hopeful of fighting for the championship with a win over Machida, who bounced back from his loss to Chris Weidman, and with a stoppage victory over CB Dalloway last month in Brazil. The California and Nevada State Athletic Commissions have been administering random drug tests to both Chris Weidman and Vitor Belfort ahead of their February 28 title fight in Los Angeles. MMA Mania reports that Weidman was tested back in November and passed his test, while Nevada has randomly tested Belfort on 3 occasions and passed all of his tests thus far leading up to the fight. And the UFC is tentatively scheduled to return to Canada for the UFC 186 pay-per-view on April the 26th in Montreal, as announced on UFC Tonight this past week. The promotion has not held a card in Montreal since March of 2013 for UFC 158, where George St. Pierre defeated Nick Diaz. The promotion held 3 events in Canada in 2014 in Quebec City, Vancouver, and Halifax. He is John Ramdeen. He is Robin Black. 30 seconds on John Jones, and then we're going to move on. To Nevada's credit, they came out on Thursday saying that for all of John Jones' tests in December, they did in fact conduct that CIR test we were discussing on Thursday, came back despite those alarming numbers we saw, said there was no irregularities. They didn't find anything suspicious when they conducted the CIR test. So at least the commission here was proactive here when they saw these numbers.
I think that's great, but you and I were talking about it yesterday, and can you shed some light on your take on his levels being so low?
Well, sometimes, I mean, it's one of the things, but sometimes those levels are so dramatically low because you push your, and this is only in some cases, that you push, if you push your testosterone levels super high, your epitest goes up to balance in the normal ratio. When your test levels, when they remove any artificial testosterone, it drops back down, and your epitest numbers take a while to go down. That's why you have this low ratio. If that's the case, you wouldn't expect to see any artificial testosterone there anyways, because it would have, the reason it would be so low is because it was all removed. But that is just one. There's a million other reasons you can have low testosterone, and that is one of them.
Something tells me that after Monday's hearing, we will be talking more of this and more I guess, pharmaceutical or pharmacological knowledge that we are all searching for.
Yeah, and we just don't have the same enthusiasm about it as we did the first 27 times. True. And I think that's how the audience is too. It's like, it was fascinating. What's this TRT stuff, drug testing, all this kind of stuff. But I think we're all getting kind of tired of it.
Perfect. I mean, so let's move on to Machida and Luke Rockhold. Can we talk about that?
We talked about the title fight the other day being set for Anderson Silva. Now, as
I don't buy it, by the way.
I don't think anyone really necessarily puts a stake whenever they say this guy is getting the title fight. So many scenarios. We don't know what's going to happen.
Rory's getting the title fight, right? They said he was.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I look at the middleweight division. We talked about it on the year-end show, how this division could really be the key division for the UFC in 2015. So many interesting fights. And Luke Rockhold, Machida is one of them. And I think especially if Luke Rockhold gets that win, I think that guy, he's not going to be quiet about wanting a title fight and being very aggressive.
And that's the thing. I think the UFC management and the execs are playing a game of chess here. We got to trap these guys. And what you do, you dangle the carrot in front of Anderson Silva. So, okay, if I knock this guy out, I thrill everybody with a stoppage victory over Nick Diaz.
Ain't nobody knocking out Nick Diaz.
That's right. Nobody's knocking out Nick Diaz. And if I do, people will regain interest. And for Luke Rockhold, he's pissed off. I'm going to make the world know that I'm the #1 guy. I'm going to obliterate Machida and force the UFC to give me that next title shot. Not a bad move.
Not to mention, we also, like the middleweight fight that kind of is forgotten, Yoel Romero and Jacare, February 28th, on the same card where the middleweight title is going to be contested.
Wow. Yeah, awesome. Super awesome. This is way more fun to talk about than drugs. These are all amazing fights. And what are you trying to say? Are you trying to say the UFC might instigate people people.
Got to do it. You're trying to sell fights, right? And that's the way
true.
to do it. And you know the type of fighter that Luke Rockhold is. Like he's not. He's gonna be verbal about things, especially if he comes out and takes out Lyoto Machida.
I'm good with all of these fights, and I'm good with whoever wins fighting anybody else. I mean, they're all. This is a cast of characters that are 5 of the best in the world. I'm interested in seeing all the matchups. Luke Rockhold versus Chris Weidman. That's like a male model versus a Ken doll too. Like people are they'll like the pictures. The ladies will dig the pictures of these two, and then the guys will like seeing them.
And then again, we can't forget about Vitor Belfort. This is a guy that really, on any given day, if we see the Vitor Belfort, that when he's performing at the highest level, there are very few people, in my opinion, that can beat Vitor Belfort. Would we be surprised if he went out there and labeled Chris Weidman?
I would. I'd be very surprised.
We all know that.
I've got to say, of all these middleweight fights we look at, it's like I'm not that pumped for Weidman Belfort. It's like this is the hurdle to get to these other fights. I'm really intrigued by.
But it's because I think it's because of all the controversy surrounding Vitor Belfort. Because all you have to do is go look back at that fight with Luke Rockhold, where he did a spinning kick and knocked Luke Rockhold out unconscious.
I'm not saying it's impossible.
So that's what I'm saying. If Vitor Belfort comes out and even has a fight similar to the one that Chris Weidman had with Lyoto Machida, back and forth, competitive, you're seeing two guys at the highest level, it's like, okay, my interest in Vitor Belfort is renewed. But because there's all the steroid talk and this and that, but you look at he's been tested. He's been tested. He passed those tests 3 different times. But what type of Vitor Belfort? Are we going to have the same type of Vitor?
Okay, first of all, you can pass those tests. The tests rise to a certain level of medicine, of science, of research, of development, and there are doctors right now who see that as a challenge and want to go even higher than that. They want to be able to trick those tests, beat those tests. They're out there. You know who can afford them? Guys with lots of money, guys who made a lot of money. You can't accuse this guy of doing anything like that, but we've seen in his career, his golden age was the TRT age, at least his resurgent golden age. That age is over now. I don't know.
All right, drugs. It's a frequent topic on this particular show. For Robin Black, John Ramdeen, I'm John Pollock. More Fight News Now Extra is coming up.